It started as a simple curiosity, a late-night impulse driven by boredom. One idle evening, while scrolling through an old online forum filled with tales of the supernatural and the bizarre, I stumbled upon a post that caught my eye: The Reflection Game. The title was intriguing, promising insights into the self, hidden truths, and a glimpse into the unknown. However, the warnings were clear. It came with a price. The rules were deceptively simple, almost innocuous. 1. Choose a mirror, preferably an old one. 2. At midnight, light a single candle and stand before the mirror. 3. Look deeply into your own eyes and ask a question about yourself you've always wanted to know. 4. Wait for the answer to reveal itself. Skepticism mingled with intrigue as I read through the comments. Stories of people who had played the game ranged from deep personal revelations to terrifying experiences. Some claimed to have seen visions of their past, while others spoke of sinister figures that emerged from the glass. But the thrill of the unknown was too tempting to resist, and my curiosity quickly overshadowed my doubts. That night, I gathered my supplies: a small, ornate mirror I had found at a flea market, a flickering candle, and my resolve. The mirror was old, its frame intricately carved with patterns that seemed to swirl and twist like the thoughts in my mind. As the clock struck 12, I lit the candle and watched the flame dance, casting eerie shadows across my dimly lit room. I stood before the mirror, feeling the cool glass against my skin. My heart raced as I recalled the warnings from the forum. People had claimed to encounter dark entities, to have their deepest fears laid bare. But I was determined to push through the fear. "Who am I?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. At first, nothing happened. I stared into my own reflection, the candlelight flickering in my eyes. Seconds turned to minutes, and doubt began to creep in, making me question my decision. Perhaps this was all just a silly game, a product of overactive imaginations. Just as I was about to turn away, I noticed something shift in the glass. The flickering flame cast shadows that seemed to move independently, swirling and twisting. I leaned closer, breath fogging the mirror surface. My reflection began to distort, the edges of my face blurring as if something was trying to break through. "Who are you?" I asked, a mix of fear and curiosity bubbling within me. And then I saw it. A figure emerged behind me, a faint outline that flickered in and out of focus. It looked like me, but was twisted, its features warped into a grotesque version of my own. I gasped and stumbled back, almost extinguishing the candle in my panic. "Do you want to know?" the figure whispered, its voice a chilling echo of my own. "Do you truly want to know?" In that moment, a wave of dread washed over me. I had always been fascinated by the darker aspects of myself. The fears, the insecurities, the things I wished to bury. But did I really want to confront them? "Show me," I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. The figure's grin widened, and I felt a chill run down my spine as the candle flickered violently. The reflection twisted again, and suddenly, I was no longer looking at my own face. I was in a dark room, surrounded by shadows, with the figure standing beside me. "Welcome to the truth," it said, its voice echoing ominously. I was paralyzed, unable to speak or move. The room was filled with whispers, voices overlapping, speaking of my deepest fears. I saw flashes of my life, moments of failure, regrets, and the faces of people I had hurt. Each image was a dagger, piercing my heart with shame and guilt. "Look closer," the figure urged, pointing to a scene unfolding before me. It was a memory of my childhood, a moment I had long buried. I saw myself standing alone in a playground, surrounded by other children who laughed and played, completely oblivious to my existence. The loneliness I felt surged back, raw and painful. "Do you remember this?" the figure taunted. "You wanted to be loved, to be seen, but you were invisible. You still are." I felt tears prick my eyes as I struggled against the tide of emotions. "Stop! I don't want to see this," I shouted, but the scenes continued to play out, each more painful than the last. "Why do you resist?" it asked, tilting its head slightly. "This is who you are. You cannot escape it." I wanted to scream, to run away from the truth, but I was trapped in this nightmare. The shadows encroached, thickening, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. "Embrace it," the figure hissed. "Accept your darkness. Only then can you be free." With a surge of defiance, I shouted, "No, I refuse to let you control me." The room shook, and the shadows recoiled, but the figure laughed, a sound that echoed with malice. "You cannot escape me. You are me. I will always be here." But in that moment, I felt a flicker of strength within me. I focused on the candle's light, its warmth cutting through the darkness. "I am not my fears. I am more than this," I cried out, my voice gaining power. The figure faltered, its form wavering as I pushed back against the darkness. I reached deep inside, confronting the pain and shame, not with hatred, but with acceptance. "You are a part of me, but you do not define me." With those words, a wave of light surged through the room, pushing back the shadows. The figure screamed, its form disintegrating into wisps of darkness, retreating into the corners of the room. I felt the ground shift beneath me, and suddenly, I was back in front of the mirror, the candle flickering weakly. I gasped for breath, my heart racing, but I was no longer afraid. The reflection stared back at me, but it was just me. No twisted figure, no shadows lurking behind. I extinguished the candle, the room falling into darkness, but I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I had faced my fears, had confronted the parts of myself I had long buried. The reflection was no longer something to fear. It was a reminder that I was whole, flaws and all. The following days were a revelation. I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I began to embrace my imperfections, learning to love the parts of myself I had once hidden. The experience had changed me, and I carried that transformation with me like a badge of honor. However, the experience did not come without its challenges. As I settled back into my daily routine, I found myself reflecting on my past more often. Memories that I had pushed aside began to resurface. Some were pleasant, but many were painful. Each time I looked in the mirror, I felt a tug at the back of my mind, a whisper reminding me of the darkness I had confronted. Sometimes, late at night, when the world was quiet, I'd catch a glimpse of my reflection in the darkened window or a passing mirror. I would pause, staring into my own eyes, and for a brief moment, I'd feel a chill. A whisper would echo in the back of my mind, a reminder of the figure I had faced. "Embrace it," it would say, a haunting echo of the past. As weeks turned into months, I became more aware of how I had changed. I started keeping a journal, documenting my thoughts and feelings. Writing became a therapeutic outlet, allowing me to process the memories that haunted me. I found myself revisiting the playground memory often, reflecting on the loneliness I had experienced. One night, while pouring my heart into my journal, I wrote about my longing for connection. I realized that my childhood isolation had shaped my adult relationships. I had built walls around myself, afraid of being vulnerable, of being hurt again. But I also discovered that I wanted to change that. I wanted to open myself up to others, to forge deeper connections. With that realization, I made a conscious effort to reach out to friends and family, seeking to strengthen those bonds. I invited friends over for dinner, joined community classes, and even started volunteering at a local shelter. Each interaction felt like a small victory, a step toward breaking down the walls I had built around my heart. But even as I embraced this new chapter in my life, I couldn't shake the feeling that my encounter with the reflection had left a mark. I began to notice strange occurrences around me, objects moving slightly, shadows darting at the edges of my vision, and the occasional flicker of lights. I brushed it off as an overactive imagination, a remnant of the intense experience I had gone through. One evening, after a particularly fulfilling day volunteering, I returned home feeling exhausted, but happy. I settled down in front of my mirror, a habit I had developed since that night. As I gazed into my reflection, I felt a sense of warmth and contentment wash over me. But just as I was about to turn away, I noticed something unsettling. The candle I had lit flickered wildly, casting erratic shadows on the walls. My reflection seemed to ripple, the edges blurring as if the glass was warping. I leaned closer, my heart racing, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a familiar figure lurking behind me in the dark, one that looked like the twisted version of myself. Panic surged through me, but I steeled my resolve. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, but I felt its presence pressing in on me, a cold, suffocating weight. I closed my eyes, trying to focus on the light within me, the acceptance I had fought so hard to cultivate. "You don't control me," I shouted, opening my eyes again. The figure flickered, and for a heartbeat, I saw a glimmer of something else. Pain, fear, regret. It was as if the figure was begging for understanding. "Help me," it whispered, its voice a haunting echo of my own. "Help you," I echoed, confusion mingling with sympathy. "But you're a part of my darkness." "No," it insisted, its voice cracking. "I am your truth. I am what you've denied. Help me find peace." In that moment, I realized the figure wasn't just a manifestation of my fears. It was a reflection of my unresolved pain, the parts of myself I had shunned. I felt compassion stir within me. "What do you need?" I asked softly. "Acceptance," it replied, its form flickering like a dying flame. "I need you to understand that I am not your enemy. I am what you've buried." The shadows around the figure began to dissipate, revealing glimpses of memories I had long forgotten. I saw myself as a teenager, struggling with self-doubt, constantly comparing myself to others. I witnessed moments of joy, too, times when I had felt loved and accepted. But those moments were overshadowed by the darkness of my insecurities. "I see you," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I understand now. I've been afraid of you, but you're a part of me. You're not my enemy." The figure's form brightened, the shadows receding. "Thank you," it breathed, relief washing over its features. "Together, we can heal." As I stepped closer, I felt an overwhelming surge of warmth enveloping us. The candle flickered, casting a soft glow over the room. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the cold surface of the mirror, and as I did, the figure merged with my reflection. For a moment, I felt a profound connection, a sense of unity that transcended fear. In that instant, I understood that true healing comes from embracing all parts of ourselves, even the darkest facets. I had spent so long running from the pain, but now I could finally face it head-on. The candle extinguished, plunging the room into darkness, but I didn't feel afraid anymore. Instead, I felt liberated. I had faced my reflection, and in doing so, I had learned to accept the entirety of who I was. The days that followed were filled with a renewed sense of purpose. I continued to journal, but now I wrote not just about my fears, but also about my triumphs and the moments of joy I discovered in everyday life. I shared my experiences with friends, and in doing so, I found that I was not alone in my struggles. I began to host gatherings, inviting friends over for game nights and movie marathons. I encouraged open conversations about our fears and insecurities, creating a safe space for vulnerability. Each shared story brought us closer together, and I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crumble. But even as I embraced this new chapter, shadows lingered at the edges of my consciousness. Occasionally, I would catch a glimpse of my reflection in a window or a mirror, and for a fleeting moment, I would feel that familiar chill. One night, while preparing for bed, I glanced into my bedroom mirror. The candle was lit, casting a soft glow, and as I stared into my own eyes, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The figure didn't appear, but I sensed its presence lurking just beneath the surface. "Are you there?" I whispered, my heart racing. Nothing responded, but the air felt thick with anticipation. I knew that the journey of self-discovery was ongoing. The reflection I had faced was a part of me, woven into the very fabric of who I was. Days turned into weeks, and I felt a sense of balance settling within me. I had learned to embrace my imperfections, to accept the shadows without letting them consume me. Yet, the figure's whisper lingered in the back of my mind, a reminder that the journey of healing was not linear. One evening, while volunteering at the shelter, I encountered a young girl named Maya. She was shy, her eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and fear. I was drawn to her, sensing a kindred spirit in her struggle. As we spent time together, I learned that Maya had experienced her own battles with loneliness and self-doubt. I saw reflections of my younger self in her, and I felt compelled to help her navigate her fears. I shared my story with her, encouraging her to embrace her uniqueness and to understand that vulnerability was a strength, not a weakness. Maya listened intently, and as we talked, I saw her begin to open up. She began to share her own fears and insecurities, her voice growing stronger with each word. It was a powerful reminder of the impact vulnerability can have on others. One night, while we were sitting in the quiet corner of the shelter, I invited Maya to play a game. "How about we try the reflection game?" I suggested, recalling my own experience. Her eyes widened with curiosity. "What's that?" I explained the rules, emphasizing the importance of understanding oneself. It can be a little scary, but it's also a chance to face our fears and embrace who we are. Maya hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. "What if I see something I don't want to?" I placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "That's okay. Whatever you see, remember that it doesn't define you. It's just a part of your journey." After some encouragement, she agreed. That night, we set up the candle in front of the mirror, the flickering flame casting a warm glow. I stood beside her, offering support as she took a deep breath. "Who am I?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. As we gazed into the mirror, I watched Maya's expression shift. The shadows danced in the candlelight, and I felt the familiar energy of the game surge through the room. Slowly, images began to unfold before us. I could see Maya's past, a blend of joyful moments and painful memories. I saw her standing alone at school, feeling invisible among her peers. I felt her hurt, the weight of loneliness pressing down on her shoulders. "Do you remember this?" I asked gently, hoping to guide her through the experience. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I felt so alone, like no one saw me. "But you're not alone," I reminded her. "You have people who care about you. You're worthy of love and connection." As the images continued to shift, I saw Maya's moments of triumph. When she stood up for herself, when she found a passion for art, when she made a friend. Each memory brought a flicker of light, illuminating the shadows that had clouded her perception. "Look at how far you've come," I encouraged. "You're strong, and you've faced so much already." As the memories played out, I felt a warmth enveloping us. The shadows that had once felt suffocating began to recede, revealing the vibrant spirit within Maya. "I see it now," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I didn't realize how strong I was. With those words, the figure that had once haunted me appeared beside her, but it was different this time. It was no longer twisted. It had taken on a more human form, reflecting Maya's growth and resilience. "Embrace me," it whispered. "I am a part of you, but I do not define you." Maya took a deep breath, her eyes shining with newfound determination. "I accept you," she said, her voice steady. "You are a part of my journey, but you do not control me." The figure smiled, its form brightening as it merged with Maya's reflection. The shadows dissipated completely, leaving behind a sense of peace and acceptance. As we extinguished the candle, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Maya had faced her fears, just as I had done months before. I could see the transformation in her eyes, the strength that had emerged from within. In that moment, I realized that the journey of self-discovery was not solitary. It was a shared experience that could foster connection and healing. By helping Maya confront her reflection, I was also reinforcing my own journey, a cycle of growth and acceptance that bound us together. From that day forward, I continued to mentor Maya, guiding her as she navigated the complexities of adolescence. We would often revisit the idea of the reflection game, discussing our fears and triumphs openly. It became a tool for us both, a way to check in with ourselves and each other. As the months passed, I noticed that the strange occurrences that had once plagued me began to fade. The flickering lights, the shadows lurking at the edges of my vision, all of it dissipated as I embraced my journey of acceptance. I learned that the reflection was not just a mirror of my fears. It was a canvas upon which I could paint my story. Each brushstroke represented a moment of vulnerability, a chance to embrace both light and dark. One evening, while sitting in front of the mirror, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I gazed into my own eyes, no longer seeing the twisted figure that had once haunted me. Instead, I saw a person who had faced their struggles, learned from them, and emerged stronger. The candle flickered softly beside me, casting a warm glow that illuminated the room, and I felt a profound sense of peace settle within me. As I reflected on my journey, I could see how far I had come. The darkness that had once felt all-consuming was now a part of my story, a chapter one could look back on with understanding rather than fear. I had learned to embrace my imperfections and to accept the complexities of my emotions. I was no longer running from my past. Instead, I was forging a path forward, one enriched by the lessons I had learned. It was then that I remembered the promise I had made to myself during my first encounter with the reflection. I would not allow the shadows to dictate my life. I would not be defined by my fears. With that thought, I picked up my journal, a companion throughout my journey. I flipped to a blank page and began to write, pouring my heart out onto the paper. I reflected on the moments that had shaped me, the triumphs that had sparked joy, and the struggles that had tested my resolve. The act of writing felt cathartic, as if I was releasing the remnants of the past and embracing a brighter future. As I wrote, I felt a gentle tug at the back of my mind, a whisper reminding me of the importance of sharing my story. I thought of Maya and the impact my words had on her. I realized that my journey was not just for myself. It was for anyone who might feel alone in their struggles. By sharing my experiences, I could help others find their own paths to healing. Inspired, I decided to start a blog, a space where I could share my reflections and invite others to join the conversation. I envisioned a community where vulnerability was celebrated, where people could share their stories without judgment. The idea filled me with excitement. It was a chance to create connections and foster understanding. The following weeks were a whirlwind of creativity and inspiration. I designed the blog, carefully curating posts that reflected my journey and the lessons I had learned. I wrote about the reflection game, inviting readers to explore their own truths and confront their fears. I shared stories of resilience, love, and acceptance, creating a tapestry of experiences that resonated with others. As I hit publish on my first post, a mix of excitement and anxiety coursed through me. Would people connect with my words? Would they find solace in my story? I didn't know what to expect, but I felt a sense of liberation in sharing my truth. In the days that followed, I watched as the responses began to trickle in. Comments flooded my inbox, each one a testament to the power of vulnerability. Readers shared their own struggles, their triumphs, and their journeys toward acceptance. I was overwhelmed by the outpouring of support and connection. One comment, in particular, stood out to me. A reader named Sarah wrote about her own experience with isolation and self-doubt. She spoke of a moment in her childhood when she, too, felt invisible, and how the shared experience resonated with her. She thanked me for creating a space where she felt seen and heard. Reading her words struck a chord deep within me. I had started this blog to share my story, but in doing so, I had created a community where others could feel safe to share their own. I responded to her comment, expressing my gratitude for her honesty and inviting her to share more of her journey. As the weeks turned into months, my blog continued to grow. Each post sparked conversations, and the community blossomed. I held virtual meetups where readers could connect, share their stories, and offer support to one another. It was a beautiful testament to the power of connection, the way our shared experiences could bridge gaps and foster understanding. Yet, even amidst this newfound joy, I occasionally felt the shadows creeping back. Late at night, when I was alone with my thoughts, I would catch glimpses of my reflection in the darkened windows or mirrors. The figure would flicker at the edges of my vision, a reminder of the darkness I had once faced. One night, while preparing for bed, I found myself standing in front of my bathroom mirror, candle lit beside me. I hesitated for a moment, memories flooding back. The reflection game had changed my life, but the encounter with my twisted self lingered in my mind. I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar mix of anxiety and resolve. Who am I? I asked softly, my voice steady. The candle flickered, and for a brief moment, I felt a shift in the air. My reflection began to warp, but this time, I stood my ground. I would not let fear dictate my response. As the figure emerged, I focused on the warmth within me, the acceptance I had cultivated. You are a part of me, I said firmly, but you do not define who I am. The figure paused, its expression shifting from a twisted grin to a look of contemplation. I am your truth, it whispered. I am the pain you carry, but I am also your strength. I know, I replied, but I've learned that I can embrace my truth without letting it consume me. You're not my enemy. With those words, the atmosphere shifted. The shadows that had once felt suffocating began to dissipate, revealing the vibrant spirit within me. The figure smiled softly, its form brightening, and for the first time, I felt a sense of unity rather than fear. I have been waiting for you to see, it said, its voice gentle. Together, we can heal. As the figure merged with my reflection, I felt a surge of warmth enveloping us. The candle flickered softly, casting a comforting glow. I realized that the shadows would always be a part of my journey, but they no longer held power over me. I had faced my fears, embraced my truth, and emerged stronger. The following day, I sat down to write another blog post, inspired by my recent encounter. I wrote about the importance of accepting all parts of ourselves, the light and the dark. I shared my experience of facing the figure in the mirror, emphasizing that true healing comes from embracing our complexities. As I shared my story, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was no longer just sharing my journey. I was creating a space where others could explore their own truths and find healing. I encourage my readers to confront their reflections, to embrace their shadows, and to find strength in vulnerability. The response was overwhelming. Readers resonated with my words, sharing their own experiences of confronting their fears. They wrote about moments of self-acceptance and the power of vulnerability. I realized that by sharing my truth, I was not only healing myself but also empowering others to do the same. Months passed, and my blog became a vibrant community of support and connection. It was a place where stories were shared, where vulnerability was celebrated, and where healing was nurtured. I felt a profound sense of fulfillment in the connections I had forged and the lives I had touched. But as my journey continued, I knew that the shadows would always be there, lurking at the edges of my consciousness. I learned to embrace them, to acknowledge their presence without letting them control me. I had faced my reflection, and in doing so, I had discovered the strength that lay within. One evening, as I sat in front of my mirror, I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. I had come full circle, embracing my journey and the lessons learned along the way. The candle flickered beside me, casting a warm glow that illuminated the room, and I knew that I was ready to face whatever came next. With a heart full of hope and a spirit renewed, I looked into my reflection and smiled. I am enough, I said softly, knowing that I had embraced my truth and found peace within. The shadows may linger, but they no longer define me. Instead, they were a part of my story, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of embracing our reflections. And as I stepped away from the mirror, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. The journey was far from over, but I was ready to face it all. New challenges, new fears, and new opportunities for growth. I had learned to embrace the light and the dark, and in doing so, I had discovered the beauty of being authentically myself.